So meet Marcus Reed. Marcus is a 29-year-old dad living down in Texas. And if you look at his life on paper, Marcus did absolutely everything society told him was the right way to handle his responsibilities. He was a provider. He stepped up. When the bills started piling up, he didn't complain. He just went out and got another job. And then another one. He was actively working 3 separate jobs. But despite doing everything perfectly by the book, he felt completely and utterly trapped.
And I really need to emphasize this point. Marcus was the exact opposite of lazy. Like, not even close. He had a wife and a 4-year-old daughter depending on him, and he took that responsibility straight to heart. To keep his head above water, the guy was surviving on a maximum of just 4 hours of sleep a night. Just imagine that level of chronic exhaustion for a second. Day in and day out, running on empty, just trying to provide a basic baseline for his family. He was giving literally everything he had, physically and mentally, to the grind.
But here's the absolutely devastating irony of his whole situation. Despite his relentless effort, despite giving up sleep, despite giving up his entire personal life, his bank balance simply never grew. He was working around the clock, managing this endless stream of bills, but he was still broke. It's a terrifying place to be, and honestly, it's a reality for so many people who get caught in this cycle where their sheer effort is entirely disconnected from their actual financial progress.
That brings us to part 1, the hard work trap, surviving instead of living. Let's look really closely at the mechanics of the trap Marcus was caught in. Society told him the only solution to his financial stress was to just work harder. So his exhausting daily timeline kicked off at a super physically demanding warehouse job. Then by evening, instead of going home to his family, he was out doing food delivery. And then, when most of the world was fast asleep, Marcus was clocking in for a night shift at a local gas station. Bouncing from one low-leverage task to another, day after day, week after week, it's the perfect illustration of trading time for money. Because when the value of your time is low, you have to treat a massive volume of it just to survive. But human beings aren't machines, right? A brutal routine like that is fundamentally unsustainable. Which leads us to part 2, the breaking point, and a really heartbreaking realization. Eventually, Marcus hit a profound emotional wall. It happened this one night when his young 4-year-old daughter just looked at him and asked this simple, totally innocent question, "Dad, why don't you come to my school events?" And Marcus just froze. He had absolutely no answer for her because the devastating truth suddenly washed over him. He was so busy trying to survive that he'd entirely forgotten to actually live. He was sacrificing the very family he was working so incredibly hard to provide for. That heartbreaking moment with his little girl, that was the catalyst. Complete paradigm shift. Marcus realized right then and there that pouring more hours into dead-end jobs, just working harder, wasn't the solution. I mean, he had maxed out his hours. There was literally nothing left to give. He desperately needed to work differently. He had to figure out a way to sever the link between his income and the sheer number of hours he was physically awake. So let's talk about part 3, skills over time, and Marcus's digital pivot. Marcus recognized a fundamental economic truth here. Skills pay significantly more than time. So instead of trying to pick up an impossible 4th job, he went down a completely different path. And the coolest part is how accessible this transition was. He obviously didn't have the time or the money to go back to school, so he completely bypassed expensive college courses. Instead, he just tapped into the massive wealth of free educational content that's already online. He took what tiny fraction of free time he had late at night, and he dedicated it entirely to learning a single, high-leverage digital skill, video editing. He essentially turned his living room into a digital classroom. Now, I gotta be super clear here, because it's so easy to romanticize this part of the journey. This transition was absolutely not some overnight success. For 2 exhausting months, Marcus made exactly $0 from his new skill. Nothing. During this time, he was battling massive self-doubt. He was dealing with friends and acquaintances literally telling him he was wasting his precious time staring at a computer screen. He was still working his other jobs, he was still exhausted, and for 60 straight days, he had absolutely zero financial return to show for it. But he pushed through. He flat out refused to quit during that $0 valley of despair.
And that brings us to part 4, the breakthrough, and getting that vital proof of concept.
Then, one day, it finally happened. He landed his very first video editing client, and the payout? $50. Now, sure, in the grand scheme of his mounting bills, $50 wasn't a lot of money at all. But psychologically, it represented something exponentially more valuable than cash. It represented genuine hope. It was undeniable proof that someone, somewhere, was actually willing to pay him for his skill, rather than just his physical presence. Weeks turned into months, and you can see this snowball effect really start to take hold. That $50, it turned into a $200 project, then $500, then a $1,000 retainer. As his new skill sharpened, his rates scaled right up with it. He was no longer boxed in by the hourly wage of a gas station or warehouse. His income was now directly tied to the value he could provide through a specialized skill. Slowly but surely, this late-night side hustle began to completely overtake his primary income. Which brings us to the final chapter, Part 5, A Better Life and the Ultimate Reward. Because he had successfully built a scalable skill, Marcus was able to execute a real exit strategy. He systematically quit the gas station first, then he dropped the delivery gig. And finally, the day came when he walked away from that warehouse job for good. Just look at where he was 1 year later. Marcus was no longer just a guy desperately treading water to survive. He was finally present. He was sitting right there in the audience at his daughter's school events. He was actually at the table for family dinners every single night. He was finally experiencing the life he had been working so hard to protect. And honestly, the most beautiful part of this whole case study is that for the very first time in his entire life, Marcus felt truly rich. Not just financially stable, but rich in time and autonomy. What this explainer really drives home is the fatal flaw in that old industrial age belief system. Society constantly teaches us that more work equals more money, but Marcus's story proves that equation is completely broken if your underlying value isn't scaling. The absolute truth is that acquiring better skills leads directly to a better life. Skills decouple your earning potential from the ticking clock. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct question based on Marcus's journey. If you find yourself currently feeling stuck, if you're working nonstop but feel like you're going absolutely nowhere on the treadmill of life, maybe it's time to stop trying to just run faster. Take a step back, look at what you're doing, and ask yourself, are you running smarter? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this sparks some new ideas for you. Keep learning, keep building those high leverage skills, and I'll catch you next time.